Our theme for this week is humility. So we're going to be looking at someone who valued the power of their story and discovery over the need to look good in the eyes of other people. C.S. Lewis was a professor of English literature at both Oxford and Cambridge universities. He was also a popular author writing Christian apologetics books, but maybe what he's most well known for is his fantasy novels, the Chronicles of Narnia. These were really famous books, they still are today, and then, as a lot of you guys probably know them, they were made into big blockbuster movies as well. Although the Chronicles of Narnia was a big success at popular level by people like you and me reading it, amongst literary critics it was actually not very well received at all. For example, one of the greatest writers of the last century and one of C.S. Lewis's closest friends was J.R.R. Tolkien, who wrote The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, and he did not like the Chronicles of Narnia at all. He felt that they were very disjointed and that C.S. Lewis drew on lots of different mythological themes, and he just felt that it was all too scattered. And we can kind of understand that if we think about how Tolkien spent so many years creating his fantasy world Middle-earth, even writing languages and things like that for the different characters to speak. And so for many years the Chronicles of Narnia remained popular amongst popular level readers, but the literary critics kind of moved it to one side. Until one day when a man that was studying C.S. Lewis called Michael Ward was reading some poetry by C.S. Lewis when he began to notice some themes from another Chronicles of Narnia book. Now, this poetry was referring to planets. C.S. Lewis was a big fan of mythology and the seven heavens and things like this that referred to different planets and how each one of these planets had certain themes. So Michael Ward began to do some digging and he began to see in other poems by C.S. Lewis comparisons to different books of Narnia in relation to these planetary systems. So, for example, in a poem on Jupiter, C.S. Lewis writes, "Winter past and guilt forgiven," which sounds a lot like the plot line for The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, where Edmund goes to the White Witch and the White Witch has made it so that Narnia is always in a period of winter, never spring or summer, and there's never any Christmas around. But the story goes on and Edmund gets forgiven and the curse is broken, and so that's the story. But there's this Jupiter theme behind the whole thing. And so what Michael Ward discovered was that each book of Narnia was based on one of the planets from the seven heavens. What C.S. Lewis believed was that the seven heavens, each one of them had a certain theme or something that was related to them that could tell a different aspect of who Jesus was. And so he wrote a series of books that explored each one of these planetary systems, whether it was Mars, for example, which is along the Prince Caspian story, which is talking a lot about war and how Aslan, who is the Jesus character in Narnia, is like the Lion of Judah who is mighty in battle. And so Michael Ward discovered that there was this Narnia code that no literary critics or anyone else had ever seen before. Now, what's amazing about this for our kind of theme today is not just the story and the fact that Michael Ward discovered this thing about these beloved books that no one had seen before, but the fact that C.S. Lewis didn't tell anybody. He had people in his lifetime criticising his books, including one of his friends, J.R.R. Tolkien, but he never said anything about it. And that was because C.S. Lewis valued the power of story over the need to be right. He was quite happy to sit back in who he was and what he knew he had done and created and allow people to discover for themselves. We can find humility in all sorts of unexpected places, and when we allow humility to do its work, it allows the possibility for amazing discoveries to be made.